for something that you saw or did, you have to, if someone asks you a question, you have to answer it.
There you go. All right, we are officially live on YouTube, so we'll figure out whatever you're talking about in a second. Well, let's get this started in 3, 2. What is up, everybody? Welcome to Comic Book Club. I'm Alex.
I'm Justin.
I'm Pete.
And we are very excited to be coming to you live tonight. We are live on Crowdcast. We're live on YouTube. We are unlive over on the podcast. You're listening to this later, but that's fine. We love you anyway. It's all good. Just a quick mention up top for the folks watching over on YouTube. We had a little bit of problems with the stream last time. All YouTube's fault, not our fault.
Wow.
Just throw it on them. Yeah. I looked it up. I did some research. It's all their problems. So if there's a problem there, you guys come on over here to the old Crowdcast.
Classic Zeldin. Throwing someone under the bus.
Oh, boy. Well, here's somebody I'm not going to throw under the bus. In fact, I'm going to welcome here into the stream. Very excited about our guest tonight. We've had him on the show tons and times, but he has a big, new, exciting book called True Believer, The Rise and Fall of Stan Lee to talk about. Ladies and gentlemen, Abraham Riesman, hello!
Yeah. Hey, do you want to say it or should I?
No, I can say it if you want. I can frame it up.
No, you know what? It's my shame. I can bring it up.
Okay, go for it.
Shame. There's no shame.
There's no shame here.
Just for the viewers at home, I've developed a bacterial infection and may or may not have to vomit at some point. I have my little bucket here, so I'll mute. I'll close the camera off or do my best. But anyway, I didn't think I'd ever have to appear in front of countless people being broadcast across the internet saying that. But just as a warning, that might interrupt the conversation at some point.
This is new media. This is what it's all about. This is a live event. People are
you got to have that raw energy. You know, it's like live theater now.
Well, you haven't been on the show for a while. We have new sections. We start off with a guest interview, then we all vomit for a bit, then we do Q&A, then we vomit a bit more, and then we wrap up the show.
Our show's more jackass.
Great.
Yeah.
More jackass than it's ever been.
I do also want to say, you said I've been on a bajillions of times. I agree, and I love doing it. And lately, I've been doing a lot of podcast interviews and streaming interviews. But you guys, I would never miss because you were the first people to invite me onto a show to talk about comic books.
Yes,
I had been on podcasts before for various other things, but you were the first people to ever say, you know about comic books, let's discuss them in a podcast format. And I will never forget that. That was like 2014, I think. Maybe 2015? Wow. I can't remember.
I don't know. We've been doing this for so long. Well, thanks for saying that, and I'm glad it's only made you quite ill. Is the only the natural
in the long run, yes.
Well, this is the thing that I actually wanted to start off with. You talked about this a little bit on Twitter, or at least you tweeted that screenshot that you sent to, I guess, your agent. You're on the other side now. You're on the interview.
It's very weird. Yeah.
So what's that been like?
Yeah. So I am the news now, not the headline news necessarily, but like I'm on the other side of the looking glass, and it's very surreal. I don't know that I like it, to be honest.
No.
Well, no, I mean, nothing horrible has happened, but it just sort of sets you up as, you know, people are paying attention to you, and Lord knows, in this day and age, the less attention you can have paid to you, maybe the better, because you become less of a target for whoever is having a bad day that day and decides to lead a brigade to ruin your life on social media. So, you know, that's me and my paranoia. But for the most part, it has been, I shouldn't denigrate any of this. I'm extremely lucky and very grateful that I've gotten all the coverage I've gotten.
Yes.
Yeah. This is not me complaining. It's more just saying it's very surreal. And, you know, I don't know how long it's going to last. I don't know whatever. It's very it's untrod territory for me.
I just wanted to say, man, congratulations. I mean, you tackled a huge project. And when you first came on the show and talked about it, I was like, holy fucking shit. How is he going to do all this? It's so much to talk about.
I like you're congratulating him on completing any book. And this book is the one.
Well,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's a huge task and you did it. And we read it. It's phenomenal. Just as I'm reading, I was like, man, I can't believe all the research that must have gone into this. I mean, do you feel like you like so different on the other side of this project? Has it really changed you? Like, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. I mean, it was a new process to. I mean, there was so many factors larger than anything I'd ever written before, and I think it's made me. I feel more comfortable with my own writing because I had this long length that I could play around with. So I could kind of let my voice go into places that usually I'm trying to be efficient and therefore cutting out the voicey parts. And also just, I had a great editor, a guy named Will Wolf-Slough from Crown Publishing at Penguin Random House, who really had a lot of confidence just in my analysis and my reporting abilities. So it's not like all my other editors have been cruel to me or anything, far from it. It's just he had this sort of extra level of going like, have confidence. Like you can get a little weird or unconventional or voicey or whatever and see what happens. So yeah, I think on the other end of it, I feel a lot more at home in my own skin when it comes to writing and reporting, I think. I still have plenty of neuroses, but I feel a little bit more like I can do it,
Well, it's
your
nice.
Your editor wants you to become more like your subject, who we should say who that is here in a second.
Oh, yeah, I guess we haven't said anything about it
yet. I
said
the title when we introed him, and then everybody started screaming and shouting.
Oh, right,
The Rise and
yes.
Fall of Stan Lee is the name of the book, just in case we were shouting too loud. One of the things, Pete was kind of bouncing around this a little bit, but I'm not a big biopic guy. I tend to stick to fiction, and that's pretty much it. Obviously, I have interest in Stan Lee from the comic book perspective.
Sure.
But one of the things that I thought was great about your book is it really is... Initially, it almost is written like a thriller in a certain way, but then over the course of it, and it's right there in the title, it feels like a tragedy. You're reading something that isn't fictionalized. It's heavily researched, like Pete was talking about. But how did you give it that structure, and what was too much? Like, how did you pull it back at certain points?
I'm going to give you a really disappointing answer, which was I kind of, when it came to virtually every... when it came to a lot of the questions of how did you write this, as a side note, I've spent a lot of time as an arts reporter being frustrated when artists give me this answer. So now I finally get why they give me this frustrating answer. I wasn't, even though like I was thinking about individual factors and what was going on, there was very little sort of, it was all kind of going on gut instinct. There's very little planning that went into, I planned stuff, but when it came to the actual sort of tone, a lot of that was just me following the instinct as opposed to saying, I should make this sound like X. It was more just, I don't know, it seems like the next word is supposed to be this, and it seems like the next word after that is supposed to be this. But, there were things I thought about, and, I wanted it to, let me put it this way. I have ADHD, so I lose attention really easy. I can get distracted very easily, except when I'm writing. And the point is, I know what it's like to be easily distracted. And I tried to write in a way that would keep me interested and keep me not wanting to put it down. And because I have such a short attention span in some ways, maybe that paid off because, in order to keep me interested, it has to be at, operating at a certain pace. And maybe I was able to pull that off. But that's something I only thought about retroactively, though, because when the book came out, people have been very kind, and a lot of people have said, I couldn't put it down. It felt like a thriller, and I was not sitting down going, I want this to sound like a thriller, but I'm proud of the fact that I made it something that was easy to digest while still being substantive, and therefore something that you could sort of really just dive into.
Do you feel like the fact that Stan Lee basically sensationalized every aspect of his life helped that, or did it make it actually harder to
well, here's the thing. It excuse me, not vomiting, don't worry, it was just
that
coughing.
felt close.
I know, so close. It wasn't. Now everybody's watching, just waiting for that to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
No one can hear anything.
Classic Chekhov's vobit.
But well, it's when you ask about whether the fact that Stan made a lot of stuff up or was not a reliable source, whether that made it harder or easier. I think it puke machine. Thank you, Aaron.
That's actually a very obscure reference to
he gets distracted easily.
How do I close this chat? I'm just going to keep looking at all these people, or is there no way to do that? Oh, well. Yeah. Anyway, so the point was, the fact of that meant, on the one hand, I couldn't trust anything, but on the other hand, it forced me to not trust anything, and not just for him. But I mean, throughout the book, I did my absolute best to, especially if something seemed especially important or dubious, to try and get multiple accounts and get documentation, whatever I could. And when I couldn't pretty verifiably say, or at least confidently say, this probably happened, I was made sure to attribute to whoever was telling the story, and attribute clearly, because something I really find frustrating in a lot of nonfiction is, so this is me revealing the dark secrets of journalism, but sometimes it'll be someone told you a story and then you recount that story and there's no direct attribution. Maybe you expect the reader will put two and two together, but they often don't. And you are then sort of portraying as gospel something that is an anecdote from one person. I find this to be, I've done this in the past. I try not to. When I am telling, if there's an anecdote that's being presented, I present it either as a direct quote from the person, or I just make it clear that this is the version from a person. And that has to be true with Stan, but I tried to have that be true with everybody. And I think the skepticism that comes from writing about a figure like Stan Lee really benefits the report. That's a benefit rather for the reporting process and the writing process, because it does make you more skeptical. It puts you more on your guard, and that extends beyond just him. I mean, there's a lot of figures in this book who have, loose relationships with the truth. And it was really useful to be in the right mindset from having thought about the core subject once I was approaching all of the secondary subjects.
Yeah, this is a very in the weeds question, but I thought it was an interesting choice on this note. So all of the footnotes are at the back, all of the citations and everything. Yeah, they're not actually in the book itself. Why did you decide to do that?
So there are a few options that you can. What'd you say?
It's because it's distracting at the bottom of the page.
Yes, it's distracting. That's the trouble.
That was actually a question for Pete. Not
We're in such minutia of the publishing.
I thought it was interesting. I don't know. I was reading it. And I thought
it's a great question. Yeah. It was something I did. There are different options for, and I felt that the only really honest but also smooth way to do it is to have it at the back, but clearly notated what page and the beginning of the sentence and everything. But I find that if you're, I found that with my writing, it seemed like if you were reading it and had the little numbers for footnotes and notes, it took you out of the reading experience. So this is the compromise measure, and I hope it suffices. But that was the approach.
Even when I'm reading something with footnotes and I know what it's going to say, I'm like, well, I have to read it anyway.
Yeah, I know. I sometimes find myself reading the footnotes first, and then just because the draw of it is too much.
I know. It's there's no perfect way to do it. This is why so few people finish Infinite Jest. It's all footnotes and endnotes, and you're just like, who can navigate that? Anyway, yes, go on.
I have a question. Now, obviously, you are a comic reader, and so Stan Lee's always been a figure in that world. What was the most surprising or unexpected, darkest, weirdest, any kind of
Well, there are a few things. I mean, for me, I'm Jewish and I spend a lot of time thinking about Jewish topics. So learning about Stan's family and his Jewish upbringing, and how he moved away from that and really rejected it, that was really fascinating to me, because that was just stuff that was not known. I learned a lot of that from his brother, Larry Lieber. I learned it through research with Romanian researchers. His parents were both born in Eastern Romania. And I got some people in country who are fluent in the language to look up stuff for me. I worked with a genealogist named Meryl Schumacher, who's terrific. And a lot of the material I accumulated from that really was fascinating to me. It surprised me because I just, there were aspects of Stan's life that just had not been discussed really at all. You know, the thing that really sticks out in my mind was Larry telling me about how their father would write letters to them, and particularly to Stan, after they were sort of, especially after Stan was steadily employed and you know, making some money and doing well for himself. Their father, Jack Lieber, would write these letters saying, "You're not doing enough for the Jews. You know, you're not celebrating the holidays. You're not giving to Jewish organizations. You're not supporting the state of Israel." Like, there were all of these, there was this laundry list of grievances that Jack had that really had a lot to do with being Jewish. And, you know, we could get in the reasons for why that conflict was there. But personally, that moment of hearing Larry talk about the letters was fascinating to me. I just never would have predicted something as specific and as sort of embedded in the Jewish experience, not just the Jewish experience. I think a lot of people can say, you know, in ethnic backgrounds, changing and adapting or maybe dissolving, that's the kind of conversation that happens. But given that I'm Jewish, the specific contours of it were very familiar from fiction and nonfiction, and just knowing my family and other people's families. So that was something that was really interesting.
That was just also from the Jewish perspective, seeing the beginning of the story.
Yeah.
After the forward start there, I was initially very surprised. I guess somehow in my head, I was like, Stan Lee flung forth fully formed into the Marvel Comics offices, and that's where we're going to start. But of course, no, you having the Jewish background makes a lot of sense. You start with this whole family background. I'm curious because I've certainly tried to research my family on various times through Hebrew school or otherwise. That had to be really tough, right?
That was, well, there, you'd be shocked at the degree to which now genealogical records are, you still have to do a lot of work, but the actual access to the records is now something that you can get with relative ease. And the stuff is indexed and you know, has had optical character recognition, so these documents are searchable. It's crazy how much, even in just the past few years, genealogical database searching has come how far it has come. So there was a lot of time just spent on Ancestry.com, which has this enormous database of information. You have to learn how to play with it and how to look for what you're looking for. And then once you have it, you have to actually accumulate all these sort of strange disconnected data points into a picture that is a narrative. And that was a challenge.
God.
But what?
That sounds so hard. Just hearing you describe it.
It was very interesting. I mean, I'm lucky, I guess, that I found the genealogical stuff was very interesting because as Alex has, I've tried to find my own family's genealogical past, and it can be very frustrating. You know, I did a big effort of that in 2012. And, you know, even then Ancestry.com did not have the kind of crazy resources it has now. And again, it's still very time consuming, and then there was also Meryl, the genealogist, who helped a lot because she knows about databases I would never even think of or find. And she also just similarly knows where to look, knows what to look for. So that was tremendously helpful. We Go Way Back is the name of her genealogical company.
That's great.
Just plugging her right there.
Good name. Yeah. Genealogical plug.
So
go ahead, Pete, please.
I can't imagine doing something this huge. Like, I feel like once you finish something like this, that's what was the first thing that you did? Like, in my mind, I would just shut off all the lights and lay down and just be in silence for a little while. Like, and
just to be clear, Pete's talking about reading a book, not even the writing process. He's just talking about reading a book.
Okay.
Like,
I finished it in kind of a funny way. I thought I was going to write an epilogue. So I actually went on this little miniature writer's retreat where for like a week and a half, I went to my aunt's condo in Sanibel, Florida. She was out of town. It was right around Christmas. And I just hung out in there and thought I was going to be writing a bunch more. But, I ended up at this place where I wrote the end of chapter 10, the next day got up to write the epilogue and just realized, I should just end with chapter 10. Like, there's no need for more story here. Like, it's going to muddy the waters. I should just end now. And so I ended up having this whole week and a half where I just like didn't have anything to do. It was great. After a year of working on that book, in addition to articles and other things, it was amazing to just sort of be like, oh, I guess I'm done now. And so I believe the first thing I did was order a pizza and go to the hot tub outside.
Yeah, that's a good answer. If
I recall correctly, it was a pretty chill then week and a half. My partner came to visit me, and we watched on Christmas Eve, we watched Wolf, the Jack Nicholson and Michelle Pfeiffer.
Interesting choice.
Yes, she's a huge fan of it. She saw it when it came out, and I was like, Wolf? I remember seeing like posters for that, but why? And we watched it, and it's great. It's a great
movie. It's a good movie. I remember watching that. Yeah.
Anyway, that was how we relaxed. At the point we watched Wolf.
Now, this is definitely jumping ahead, but just because you are mentioning where the story ends, from a narrative perspective, from a biography perspective, love the whole book. I think, like we talked about at the beginning, you start with the roots of his family. You explain kind of his origins, where he's coming from. You work us through the Marvel Comics period, the post-Marvel Comics period. All of this stuff is, I think, people don't know the details, but they're at least familiar enough to be like, aha, Marvel Universe, I know what's going on here. The last part of Stan Lee's life, which I do think people who have been paying attention know how wild it was. What was it like trying to structure a story where suddenly, like, here are 5 apeshit banana characters coming in, driving things absolutely insane?
You know, it was an interesting challenge because, you know, like I say in the overture, you know, Stan Lee's story is where objective truth goes to die. And that really became true in two core areas of the narrative. There's the 60s and who created the Marvel Universe. And then there's the post-Marvel 1998 onward, exactly what happened between him and all of these characters who have gotten into run-ins with the law. Excuse me, not barfing yet.
Good. Very close. Interesting you said yet. Just saying. You said yet.
No. Okay. Cool. You know, people who have had a lot of, there's a lot of controversy and a lot on the line. And I did my best to talk to as many people as I could when it came to the last few chapters of Stan's life. A lot of people were surprisingly willing to talk at length. How much I could trust what they were saying was, you know, hard to say, but they certainly were open. And then there were the people who just didn't want anything to do with it. You know, I talked virtually everyone from that inner circle I spoke to for at least like one phone conversation. Very often it was like, not very often. Sometimes it would be people saying, you know, I'll talk to you on the phone, but it has to be completely off the record. And so I honor that, but we did have a conversation. And, you know, and then in the case of his daughter, JC, you know, we had 1 3-minute phone conversation that was on the record and was very strange. And I just tried to talk to as many folks as I could, look at legal filings, of which there are many related to that last month or year and a half, rather, after the death of Stan's wife, Joan, until his own death in November 2018. Looking at that period, I'll come back to what I said before. I tried to be as open and honest about the limitations of my knowledge as I could while writing it. And while researching it, I spent a lot of time frustrated because I couldn't get to the bottom of everything. And then at the end, you know, I did my best to just sort of say, here's what I know, and here's a lot of stuff that I don't know, but here's what I have been told. And here's what I found out about what I'd been told, et cetera, et cetera. You just put as much data in there as you can while not making it clunky. And you just hope that you told a story that is clear enough while, again, acknowledging its limitations.
I feel like, I mean, his post-Marvel years, that's when we sort of started interviewing people and him, like the post-Stripperella time and all of that. Right. And so it's very interesting to me how much his cameos in the Marvel movies have like redeemed him. And
in people's go ahead.
No, I mean that's sort of the root of it. Like he was in such a place, and the times we interviewed him, we were like, this guy's someone's fooled him into doing this. What is he talking about? And then now he is like, you have so many like Stan Lee fans mad at you about some of the things you said in the book that are very real stories about him. Like, can you tell us about like just that little mini arc of his life?
Sorry, which mini arc?
The arc from post Marvel.
Like with the cameos.
Into the cameos and how that sort of redeemed.
Right. So Stan had been doing various forms of cameo or voiceover or whatever since the early 70s. And just little dribs and drabs that eventually sort of coalesced into, in the new millennium, the concept of the Stan Lee cameo. Starting with X-Men in 2000, virtually every Marvel movie, and that's not just the Marvel Cinematic Universe, has these appearances from Stan Lee. And they start to really have a formula. Really, it's present from the beginning, which is like, he's not playing himself exactly, but he's playing some variation on like the Stan character. It's just that this Stan character happens to be a hot dog vendor, and this one's a strip club announcer, and this one's a intergalactic barber. It's like there's always some twist on it, but it was always the character of Stan Lee. And that's one of the reasons that you do see, as you say, this redemption where there's the 80s and 90s were really diminishing returns for Stan. He was languishing at Marvel. He was not getting the movie and TV deals that he wanted to make. He eventually was not really being given any responsibilities. He was just sort of sitting in an office, not really doing much, trying to get this comics line at Marvel off the ground that never happened. And then in the new millennium, he starts, it's this real cross. I don't know what the graph thing to describe it would be, but basically you have at once you have the advent of the cameos, where all of a sudden everybody around the world knows who Stan Lee is. Even if they don't really know anything about him, they know like, oh, that's the Marvel guy and he's in the movies and I know what he looks like. And at the same time, in that same 20-odd year period, Stan's personal life goes like his real life goes completely to hell. First gradually, well, it's not so gradual, but the point is you have this weird dichotomy in the new millennium where at once he is doing terribly and doing better than he ever has. And that's what leads you to a lot of the backlash that's happened to my book, which I get where it's coming from. I respect that Stan means a lot to people. And one thing that is very interesting is even before the book was out, long before the book was out, or there were any reviews or anything, people would just take issue on my Facebook ads with the subtitle of the book, Rise and Fall. They would say, fall? He never fell. How dare you? They'd get mad about it. And what's interesting to me about that is even if you don't accept my thesis that the fall began a while ago, even if you just know about the awful stuff that happened in the last year and a half of his life, the stuff that was all over the tabloids, you'd know that he fell. Like if you're actually paying attention to Stan's life, even before you read my book, whatever I say, of course he fell. The last year and a half of his life was a complete hell pit of elder abuse. And yet that's not the Stan Lee that anybody that was getting upset about that knew. They could have had that knowledge and they either rejected it or interpreted it differently. And instead, what they saw was this guy who went out at the top of his game because he was in the movies. Now, forget that he was not really getting paid anything for these movies. He was getting paid scale. He showed up and did a day's work. Forget that he had this executive producer credit that meant nothing. He was not actually getting paid. He didn't have a cut of any of this. If you saw him in the movie you liked and that movie did well, that must mean he was doing well. And that's just not how it was.
Yeah.
That was not his life. And especially at the end, that was not his life. And it's just fascinating to me that the fandom around Stan is not just how much even stuff that's already been reported prior to my book just doesn't fit into that for people. Because they're really into the fictional character of Stan Lee, who appears in the movies and who also has appeared in comics going back to the 60s. The fictional character of Stan Lee is had a happy story. Well, that's the other thing is people getting upset about the fall part. It's I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the Stan Lee story, the story about the fictional character of Stan Lee, is a happy and inspirational one. And even if it's not, even if you know, it's hard for people to process that bad things could happen in that story.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Is what I'm getting at. And I think that's an obstacle for some people. I would hope that people maybe give the book a chance and see that it's not me writing a hatchet job or trying to cancel somebody as I've been accused of. That's not the kind of book it is, but it will make you see things. Even if you judge Stan as blameless, you'll see bad things happen in his life. And for some people, that's just too much.
Well, it's such a uniquely American story, and you can't have that without those falls, those low points, those parts where he's literally constructing a fake person over top of the problems that he's having. I mean, consciously or subconsciously.
Yeah, no, and it took him a while. It's this gradual process. The character of Stan Lee was not completed in the 60s. Far from it. I watched at the Stan Lee Archives a copy of this film strip that was made by Marvel in 1965 when they were shopping around their first animated series to networks. And it's this pitch. It's a sizzle reel of the animation, but it's also a pitch on camera from Stan. And, there's a little like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 thing that counts. And then you see this image. And it's, 42 odd year old Stan Lee, completely bald, no glasses, much less shades, clean shaven.
Wow.
And the way he's talking is as follows. Hello, my name is Stan Lee, and I'm the editor of the Marvel Comics Group. I'm here today to tell you about, and you're like, what?
That's so funny.
This is Stan? But he hadn't built the character. Even by the late 60s, in 68, another thing that's at the archives is this 1968 failed talk show pilot that he did, where he wanted to have a political talk show, like a McLaughlin Group type thing, not even about comics or the arts. He wanted to have a political talk show where he would talk to young people about the issues of the day. And this is 1968. It's a pretty intense time for politics in the United States. And again, when he introduces the pilot, he's got a beard, again, not the mustache. He's got the beard, no glasses. And he's, again, talking in this staid, intellectual, sometimes almost monotone way. And you're like, it's 1968, and he still hasn't become the voice in public that he had been in the comics letters pages.
I love all these details.
Not to interrupt. I mean, I think it's worth pointing out here as well that, I think we talked about this on Twitter a little bit before the book came out because I had read through it by then. And I remember reading it and being like, oh, shit, people are going to react really badly to this because they're going to skim it. Like, they're going to skim it. They're going to get, you're going to get on, not to throw them under the bus or anything, but you're going to get on CBR, and it's going to be the top 10 most shocking moments from the rise and fall of Stan Lee. But you researched this insanely deeply, and I think, you read through the book, not only does that have to, at least in part, come from a place of love, but also you talk about the things that are good about him as well. It clearly seems like
he achieved a lot, and a lot of people, he achieved a lot, and people loved him. Like, people who knew him really well. This was not a guy who you turned off the camera and immediately it was that he was a jerk to everyone.
Yeah.
I tried to talk to a lot of people who really loved him. To understand why they loved him and what they loved about him. And that's just as important to the story, but it's not the full story, And what I'll say is I'm actually one of the great pleasant surprises of my life was the fact that was not how the book has been covered so far. With the exception of the Daily Mail and the New York Post, which are the Daily Mail and the New York Post, they have their purpose and they do wonderful things. And, they ran very salacious headlines about some of the more salacious stuff that was in the book. That was it. Even the geek sites have taken the book. Either they haven't talked about it at all, or they've been weirdly pretty respectful. And I'm fine with either approach. but the fact that people have not been just drilling it down into 10 most shocking moments from this book has been really very gratifying, because I'd much prefer it that way. I'd much prefer that people think about it as a whole work than just having pull quotes that are, the most upsetting things in there.
Yeah.
And I just think
Justin, we should probably, this is a good time to talk about, we've broken out the top 10 most shocking moments from the book. So here we go. Number 10.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, Justin.
Okay.
I just, as a comic fan, just on what we were saying, like, you have to look, like, so many comic stories are about the rise and fall of the hero, especially Marvel comics. It's about seeing, like, I just don't know, as a comics fan, to be angry at seeing this man you revere, this person you revere's life, and ignoring the dark parts, ignoring, like, the parts where there's struggle. Like, that's literally the journey of most every Marvel character, and what made Stan Lee a figure of any kind.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to sensationalize it or turn it into a novel, but the reason we tell those stories is because that's often how human lives go, or at least one lens to look at a human life through. And I was lucky that the story itself was as interesting as it was, and I could just sort of do my best to not get in the way of it. There's no, I've gotten a couple of reviews from book critics who liked the book, but their like one critique is sometimes he overstates his point. And that's a totally valid critique. I will do my best to not do that in the future, because it in a way it's a compliment. It's saying like, the point is good enough. You found the right thing.
Yeah.
You don't
Your
have
take
to
is
talk
great.
it up.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. You don't have to talk it up too much. And I do think about some of the stuff I wrote in the book and sort of cringe a little bit and going like, I guess that sort of spoke for itself. I don't know why I had to have that extra sentence where I'm going, and look at how important this is. But the point is, I didn't have to do a lot of that, because the story is just so interesting and dynamic on its own. And like I said, part of my role was just to sort of not get in the way.
Yeah. Now, to that point, I do have a question about the content that I thought was interesting and I liked, but there are points of the book where you actually become a character, where you refer to yourself and events that happen. Why that choice?
Well, that's going to come back again to a little bit of the disappointing you thing, where it's just, that wasn't a plan. That was more just, as I was writing, I would get to places where it felt like, I think the only way I can convey what I'm trying to convey here is by sort of inserting myself. The book is not about like my journey. It's not like Dear Diary, here's what I did. But there are moments where, for one thing, I think a lot of the people in the book, you can't fully understand unless you get what it's like to be in the room with them. And I think that the best way to convey that sometimes is through a little bit of first personing and just saying, this is what it's like to interact with this person. And then maybe the reader has a deeper understanding. And then other times it goes to what I was saying about the sort of attributing things to people. Sometimes that goes even beyond attributing sort of a factual thing, but it can make a quote actually clear, so you don't have to torture it. So like, basically, that's a long way of saying sometimes dialogue is the best way to convey the information, that, because like if the quote is somebody saying yes to a question you just asked, that doesn't mean you get to just have the quote be yes, insert bracket to what you just said, which was this, and then and bracket. Sometimes it just only makes sense if you say, I asked him this and he told me that. Mm-hmm. And then, I tried not to do it much, but there were times when it just felt like that was the only way to properly tell the story. And I just sort of had to trust that it didn't get in the way too much.
Yeah. We actually have a bunch of questions piling up over in the YouTube comments and over here on Crowdcast. So
I did want to ask one more. You had mentioned that some people said they wanted to talk like off the record. Were there certain conversations that you were like, oh, please let me put this in the book, or
sure,
at least
plenty. Oh, yeah.
really?
Are you kidding me? Yeah, no. I mean, that's unfortunately the nature of being a reporter. You're always going to have that comment that would just explain so much. And, you know, you have to work around it. And you do the, what is this person saying? My record clearly states I have no.
Don't read the comments.
Don't read the comments. Don't read the comments.
Sorry,
We'll read
sorry.
the
I just
comments.
get nervous
That's good.
talking about this because these are tough ethical questions.
Yeah.
So you don't
You
want
can flow
invited-
ethics here. We have no ethics.
I don't want anybody impugning my journalism, but
we
yeah,
have
no,
all of your
no,
off-the-record people in the comments section, though, just salivating for this answer.
I'm sure they just want to catch me in the lie, but no, I mean, yeah, there were definitely things that people told me that I couldn't report and will never report, but were interesting. I don't think anything that would have altered the course of the book, but stuff that would illuminate.
Yeah. I mean, you say as a reporter, it always happens. I didn't know that. I didn't know that was like a common.
Well, I shouldn't say always, but a lot of with stories, you will often have that one source who won't talk to you on the record, but explains how this all works, or tells you something that the subject did that would just explain it all. But you have to work around it and find other people to talk about it or incorporate it somehow in a way that doesn't. It's hard. But luckily, I got a lot of stuff on the record that I was able to use.
I do have one question before we go to the fan Q&A. What was the deal with Buzz Aldrin?
Yeah, Buzz Aldrin pops up twice. I was actually just thinking about this. I feel bad. Spencer Ackerman, who is a great reporter and a true comics geek, you should have him on the show sometime. Great guy. He started reading the book, and in the overture, I referred to Buzz Aldrin as a C-lister. Mm-hmm. Now, I meant that in the context of in Hollywood, he's like in terms of showbiz, he's like a Dancing with the Stars type. He's not an A-list movie star or anything. But I referred to him as a C-lister in that context, the context of showbiz, but I don't explicitly say that. And Spencer tweeted at me. He was like, C-list, the man walked on the moon. Yeah. It's like, touche. Okay. I probably could have phrased that a little more clearly. I did not mean to say that means he's on the C-list of humanity. Yeah, but
I think you actually have him, I think, 3 times in the book. So it works out as a perfect rule of 3.
Yeah, because
it's so funny because you set it up and then you're looking at it. It's like, here's this fucking guy again.
Yeah. Loser moon guy, Buzz Aldrin.
Come on.
Who cares? No. I have nothing but respect for Buzz Aldrin. And he punched that guy who accused him of faking the moon landing.
Yeah.
So that,
I mean, you got
that's a pretty legendary move.
Yeah. Let's go to some questions here because, again, we have a bunch. This is from Josh. I listened to your interview on Off Panel, and hearing you talk about the archival research got me itching to get back in an archive, former special collections librarian, but I wanted to know what individual record or what aspect of the Lee papers at the American Heritage Center stuck out to you or interested you the most?
That's a tough question because there was a lot of interesting stuff there. In terms of text documents, it was his autobiography outline. He wrote this outline for a memoir in 1970. It was late 70s, either 78 or 79. I'm blanking all of a sudden. But it wasn't published. And, many years later, in 2002, there was a memoir that he co-wrote that came out. But in 78, 79, he'd taken these notes, and he was much closer to a lot of the events as of then, and got into a lot of interesting detail about his life prior to Marvel and even during Marvel. That proved to be a very useful document in trying to understand Stan's at least depiction of his life, but also it offered clues to things that actually happened. I mean, in there he mentioned that he almost got married while he was in the war. He wasn't serving combat, but while he was in the army, he almost got married to somebody, and that's just in there. I'm like, okay, well, that's something I obviously have to figure out more about. And anyway, when it comes to non-text, I think what sticks out in my mind is the home movies. For some reason, deliberate or maybe accidental, I don't know. Stan and his wife, Joan, when they were donating things to the American Heritage Center over the decades, donated VHS tapes of their home movies. And when I say home movies, I mean them hanging out at Christmas, them just spending an afternoon on the patio. It's not barfing.
So much closer. The closest.
I just have to let you know. But that was completely fascinating to me. It's just these unedited. I mean, they're like choppy because you turn on the camera, turn it off, but it's really basically just raw footage. And I just wasn't expecting to find that there really. But that also proved very useful in trying to understand the story.
Yeah. Got a question here from famous Santa Claus canceller Daniel Kimblesmith. Off the top of your head, can you tell us any origin stories of some of the classic catchphrases, the state motto, NY motto, Excelsior, etc.? Do you know any when, how his go-tos got codified?
Excelsior came about. There's not a ton of how, like, there's Stan's version of these things, but some of them were exist. I mean, obviously there was the New York State motto was the use of Excelsior, but that was also, I'm really flaking out on this. I did know more about the origins of the catchphrases, but I finished writing this book like more than a year ago, and some of the things have fallen through the cracks. I can't believe it's Kibblesmith, who I grew up with, asking me and putting me in this stumper.
There he is.
But what I will tell you is that Excelsior came relatively late. That didn't start to pop up until about 1967, which was interesting. But Nuff Said, Face Front, that stuff, that dates back earlier in the 1960s. So anyway, that's an extremely embarrassingly bad answer, but I can say, if you don't want to wait for me to come with an answer on the next time I appear on this show, you can find that stuff in a wonderful book called Stuff Said, that was written by John Morrow. It's this sort of grand timeline of the Lee, Kirby, and Ditko relationships. It's a really interesting book, and there's a lot of stuff in there where Morrow turns up like, this was something, this catchphrase that Stan used to say was really big on this one radio show in the 1950s. And that may well have been when Stan first heard it,
cool.
et cetera, et cetera. So Stuff Said, John Morrow. It's a really good book.
Next question. This should be a super easy one to answer. This is from Alex, not me. In your book, mentioned that Kirby Ditko drove the plots and concepts, but I was wondering if you think Lee can be credited with co-creating the characters, personalities vis-a-vis the dialogue.
So that's a question. It's a tough one to answer because I think that you can. It's hard to say. I would say with some characters, certainly the dialogue is part of who they are, but it gets at the question of what counts as creating. And as I think I made clear in the book, I thought the best working definition of creating to go with for the purposes of this book was to think about it in Stan's own terms. And Stan himself articulated a lot of times that for him, the only meaningful creator, and I'm not saying I necessarily agree with this universally, but for the purposes of this investigation, this book, Stan's criterion was whoever came up with the initial idea, whoever had that initial spark of an idea. In the new millennium, he started referring to to Ditko and Kirby as co-creators, but it was very grudging. And in his memoir and in interviews, he would tell you, literally, he would explicitly say, "I call them the co-creator, but I'm really the creator because I had the initial idea." So, what I was trying to explore a little bit was the degree to which, other people could meet that standard, but. All of this is sticky. I do think that dialogue is an important part in some of these characters in sort of defining their voice. I mean, you can't really imagine The Thing without, Aunt Petunia and the Yancey Street Gang. But it gets stickier with other people. I don't think that you can universally say the dialogue used for this character is pretty foundational to creating the character universally. But that's something where intelligent people can disagree, I think.
Yeah. I mean, to that point, and not to put you on the spot too much, but this is kind of the central question of the book, right? Or at least one of the central questions is Kirby versus Lee, who created what? That's certainly the thing a lot of people are
right. And
on.
And what I say in the book, and this is why I'm kind of hemming and hawing a little bit here, is I don't think there's an answer to that question.
Yeah.
Like, I really don't think anybody's ever going to be satisfied. you're never going to have that smoking gun or that universal definition of what constitutes creation or what constitutes writing. And part of the lesson of the book, I would hope, is that you have to like live with, I might be vomiting soon. I'm just going to tell you, you have to live with the ambiguity, the factual ambiguity and the sort of definitional ambiguity of what constitutes creation and what constitutes writing.
I mean, that's the nature of collaboration. Like you can't unentwine that rope to a point, you know,
to a point. But you also, the real trouble with it is you can also then fall into the trap of saying, well, you can't untwine them. And so therefore it's 50-50 when that's not necessarily how it works, you know, but that's often the default that people go to when they talk about Lee and Kirby is they say, well, it was probably a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. That may be true, but we can't discount the idea that Kirby or Lee was accurate in saying that the initial idea was really all them as opposed to something that was collaborative. So again, the reason I'm not giving you a hard answer on all that is because I don't think there really is one. And I think it's just going to be a frustration that we'll all have it's going to be an itch we can't scratch for the rest of time when people talk about comics and Marvel.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going through the questions.
Alex,
yeah, I got to hurry up a little bit. This is from Hollywood Homer. Why is Stan Lee still seen as William Shakespeare when he's not? His creation list is so long, few exceptional hits. Like, this is teeing you up right here, like WWE's Vince McMahon.
Oh yeah. Well, I for listeners who don't or know or viewers, whatever, I've contracted with Simon & Schuster to write a second book, which is a biography of Vince McMahon. The Emperor of professional wrestling.
Boy.
Yeah. Well, that'll be it. That we'll get into that when I'm on the show around then. That's its own challenge. But you know, look, people love Marvel, and Stan was sold as the guy behind Marvel, and you know, people treat him like Shakespeare because he was depicted as anything you like about these characters that's not visual was Stan. That's what was sold to people. And so if you like those characters, of course you're going to say, wow, well then Stan, if he invented all of these things and he's the only guy behind the stories and the characterization, then of course he's Shakespeare. You know, these are titanically, writing a book about Vince McMahon. I wish you good luck. Yeah, well, I'm working on it. It's a slightly dicier gambit than this one, but you know, we'll see how I do.
I don't know if there's going to be as many people who disagree with you. I mean, it's kind of more commonly known that Vince was.
Well, I don't want to get into the Vince stuff.
Okay,
I don't want to, blow anything, but anyway, so yeah, I guess that's what the one-to-one relationship that was sold of Stan equals Marvel, Marvel equals Stan means if you love the stories of Marvel, you're going to think of him as the great progenitor of them.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to try to wrap this up quickly for you so you can go.
I can go barf. Yeah, thank you.
So you can go barf. But we
like a lot of our guests.
Jay Simpson, did anyone that Abe interviewed do a Stan Lee impression, and who did the best?
Well, first of all, everyone did a Stan Lee impression. Anytime anyone said something that Stan had said to them, in recounting it, they had to do it in the voice. I don't think there was, I'm not making this up, I think there was not a single person I interviewed who quoted Stan and did not do the voice, their version of the voice. Who was the best one? Easily Jim Salicrup. Jim Salicrup,
really? Wow.
Jim Salicrup not only was great at it, did Stan's voice professionally at Stan Lee Media, because they had this little animated Stan who would do stuff, and they didn't, for whatever reason, it ended up not being that Stan was doing them. It was Jim Salicrup doing the recordings, and he sounds just like him. It's crazy. Jim Salicrup's Stan impression, I highly encourage you seek it out the next time you see it.
I feel like he did it. Did he do it on the show? We've had him on a couple of times.
Yeah,
he's a nice guy.
Next time you have him on, you have to make him do the Stan impression. Blow your mind.
Absolutely. We do that for all of our guests, usually. So. All right, I'm going to start to wrap this up here just to let you go, just to let you heal up. But any final thoughts on the book and what this crazy week has been like for you?
I'm just very grateful. Thank you to everybody who has bought the book or talked about the book. It's been very humbling, and I'm extremely lucky, and I have nothing but gratitude. So thank you all for this rollout, and I hope everybody gets a chance to look at the book and come to their own conclusions, and hopefully see that this was not something I wrote with bad faith. And I hope people will approach it with good faith as well.
Thank you so much for coming on. The book
Congratulations.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hope you feel better.
Rest up. Go feel better. Go bye.
I will. Okay. Goodbye, everybody. And goodbye.
Bye. Thanks for powering through.
Of course.
Fortitude. Excelsior.
All right.
What a
There
guy.
we go. Once again, Abraham Riesman. The book is called True Believer, The Rise and Fall of Stan Lee. And really, it is real good.
Great
like
book.
I said on the
Check
show, not a big biopic guy. I read every page of this, completely ate it up. It was real good stuff.
Yeah, Alex hates people, so it's crazy for him to read about.
Most of the books that I read are about big red dogs, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, big Clifford guy. I mean, honestly, what should have happened at the end of the interview is one of us should have vomited. That would have been the perfect payoff.
Can I say I was a little disappointed?
Wow.
Wow. A little bit.
Yeah, he was trying to get him to talk. He kept getting him to talk.
That would have been
Another
just,
question.
all I'm saying is comedically, at that point, you say goodbye and then just blah, the entire camera fills.
Honestly, your question about lukewarm clam chowder was over the line. It's unhelpful and unnecessary.
Wow.
I was trying to coach him along. And it is time for our next section, which is my favorite section because you all make it up, is your audience questions. Woohoo! And for the audience questions, you all have figured this out already, but in case you haven't, drop a question, ask a question on Crowdcast and YouTube. Just drop it in the comments, and I will read them there. But before we do, other than lukewarm clam chowder, what y'all drinking tonight? Justin?
I'm back in that high life.
Nice.
Oh, look at
Living
you.
it up.
The sign got to you,
Got the
huh?
sign in the background, got the cold, lukewarm beer in my hand. It's perfect.
Champagne and beers.
I picked up a Harpoon the Long Thaw. Ooh. It's really good. It's a hazy IPA with orange peel and coriander.
Coriander. Wow.
You lost
very
me,
delicious,
coriander.
actually, and very nice for like the kind of snow, kind of not snow we're having. Good stuff.
Oh, that's nice. There's something about Harpoon. I lived in Boston for a year, and every bar has Harpoon in it. Every time I see Harpoon, I'm like, I can't do that. Takes me back too hard.
Pete, what about you?
I got Pony Boy. Stay golden. And I'm rocking the Pioneers cozy.
Oh, Pioneers. Nice.
Yeah. Hey, should we mention that now? Just for folks who have been following us since the live show, we don't obviously know what is ever going to happen with our live show, but one of the venues that we performed at, the Pit main stage, has closed.
It has
They keep
closed.
using the word surrendered, which is very weird.
It is weird that they say surrendered, and I don't know what legality there would be.
Right. Well, they've surrendered that space, which is very sad. But the Pit Loft is still around, so
and Pioneers.
See what happens. And
Pioneers the bar.
There you go. So we'll see what happens.
That's where the show after the show took place, when we would all go there and drink.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the questions here. I'll actually go to YouTube first. This is a big spoilery question for WandaVision. So if you don't want to know, turn away for the next minute or two. But this is from OG. Do you think Monica had any superpowers before crossing the Westview barrier?
Ooh, good question. I think not. I think that in this world, in the MCU, I think the powers were a result of her proximity and relationship with Wanda from her time in the Hex.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like there was maybe something that was dormant, and then the kind of Hex caused something to, maybe her time hanging around with Captain Marvel. I'm not sure, but I wouldn't say definitely yes or no, but I hope there was a little something in there.
That's why you're a real journalist, Pete.
I am not.
That's right.
And I don't pretend to be one like you assholes.
Let me ask you, Pete, are you on the record or off the record right now?
We're on a show, so
it's wild to me that you didn't know what that was. We've done thousands of interviews.
Yeah, truly, thousands.
Well, I've never written a book of that length and relied on other people's information about something I don't know. So I wanted to hear like how maybe frustrating it would be to get the thing you need, and then someone say that's off the record.
Deeply frustrating.
Yep.
And he told us a great story because of it. So fuck you, man.
Right. It's like how before the show you told me off the record that you didn't really read the book.
Oh, wow.
What an asshole.
Wow.
Alex is not a journalist. Alex is not a journalist. And also recently published in the New York Post, It's fucked up. You claim to be a journalist, not a journalist.
No, I'm a tab writer.
See, and people ask me like, "Oh, why don't you tell people things? Why don't you open up and share shit?" That's why I told you, and I specifically said, "Don't bring it up on the show." And what did you do? You piece of shit.
Oh my god,
you're a fucking horrible person.
Pete, it was
That's
for
on
a
the
joke. Does that make it better?
No, it doesn't. I trust
All right,
you
I'm
with
sorry,
things,
Pete.
and then you throw it in my fucking face.
No, you did read. You did read it though. You did read part of it. I am joking. All right. Why don't we move on to other questions? This is from Pablo D. Martinez. DC Warner has a director for a Blue Beetle movie. Thoughts?
Yeah, I'm down, especially if it's the new Blue Beetle.
Yeah, they said it's Jamie Reyes, and I mean, I'm excited about it. I thought that comic that they did with Blue Beetle was really amazing. I hope they stay close to that because it was some really moving, great stuff. We were all very impressed with that comic, and the art was glorious. So
yeah, it was Raphael Albuquerque, I believe.
Yeah, the Kirk.
The Kirky.
The Kirky. So I really hope that it does stay true to that because I was really impressed with it. But yeah, Blue Beetle, one of my favorites, so I'm excited about that.
I don't know. Maybe it's because we've been burnt so much by the DC movies, just in terms of development. Like, I'm not even talking about the quality of the movies themselves, because I know we vary in terms of how we think about them, but they've talked about so many movies that just have not happened at this point. I'm still so iffy until they actually start coming out at a regular pace, which I think they might now that they have more of an architecture in place, but they were talking about, I believe, a Blue Beetle TV show a couple of years ago. Now they're talking about a movie. So fingers crossed, to be awesome. Like I said, Pete, Jaime Reyes is awesome and a great character. And I think, like, I'm always a fan of hitting towards those younger characters more than the older legacy characters.
Exactly. Like Titans, the show that everyone universally loves.
Everybody loves Titans. Fuck Batman. Yay, Titans, I always say. But yeah, I guess we'll see what happens. We have a bunch of, here we go. Nick Grayson, what's some of your favorite high art takes on classic heroes, i.e. Silver Surfer Requiem?
Ooh, nice. I mean, the Long Halloween, I think, falls into that. All those Jeff Loeb, Tim Sale books, not all of them, but they had a nice run of sort of telling interesting, elevated stories.
Frank Quitely's Superman. I think it was All-Star Superman.
Let me throw out Alex's answer, Superman for All Seasons, real quick.
Yeah, that's a good one. I completely blanked on the name of it, but the Lee Bermejo Batman book that came out a couple of years ago, like Batman at Christmas or Christmas Batman. I think.
Christmas.
It's called Christmas Batman.
Yeah.
It was called I Saw Mommy Kissing Christmas Batman. Right?
Yeah. Ooh, Fantastic Four Unstable Molecules. That's a
great
good one. Also, oh my God, I am blanking on everything tonight. The X-Men one, the Complete History of X-Men.
Yes. Wasn't that what it was called?
No, it was like X-Men Christmas, I think.
Oh my God.
I feel like Christmas is sort of
You're
a
really
catch-all for
stuck
you.
on Christmas, it seems like.
I'm drinking this, beer. It says the long thaw. I'm thinking about some snow falling down. Just having a good old time.
What a romantic time for Alex.
It's very romantic. This is from Edward Doherty. Some of the best artists in the industry are guys like Jim Lee and Greg Capullo, who are incredibly skilled at rendering and drafting in detail, but can be somewhat lacking in terms of storytelling. Interesting.
Ooh.
Who are the artists in comics with great storytelling skills that can be overlooked because of their more simple or stylized draftsmanship?
Wow, that is I love that question. That is a targeted question. And I think I agree with that. Like, I mean, Jim Lee specifically, like he draws in that 90s style, which is like about the about the pose. It's not about the dynamic storytelling.
Yeah. I would disagree a little bit with Greg Capullo, though, particularly his collaborations with Scott Snyder recently. I think have been pushing him in great ways, and his layouts are awesome. They're more careful. Edward Doherty says, nah, in the comments. Yep. All right.
Asked and answered. But what about the flip? Like a great narrative visual storyteller that hasn't been recognized.
Ooh, wait, quick note. Ace Cable over on YouTube says, Grand Design by Piscor.
Yes.
That's what I was thinking of. Not
Ed
X-Men
Piscor.
Christmas.
Yeah.
You were way off with the Christmas thing.
Do you guys? I'm trying to think of someone who
Great storytelling skills that be overlooked because they're simpler or stylized draftsmanship.
I feel like someone Darwin Cook is universally loved, but that style where it's a little more cartoony. There's a book we're going to talk about coming up. Oh, what about like Riley Rossmo?
Yeah, I love Riley Rossmo.
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean,
on the same note, Raphael Albuquerque. I do think Raphael Albuquerque kind of lacks something in backgrounds. There's a lot of time there's just kind of a character there on a color wash.
You watch your fucking mouth, man. Some of the shit he did for Blue Beetle, the backgrounds were amazing. The colors, the toning. Come on.
All right.
Don't challenge the Kirky.
Yeah, you fucking it's hard. I can't sit here and shoot down any artist or whatever because
it's not even shooting down. It's saying just the stylistic differences, because I think the point of the question is Jim Lee became a superstar because of his the style that he draws in, and there are a lot of artists out there that aren't superstars despite doing this great yeoman's work of really great dynamic storytelling.
Patrick Gleason, right?
That's another good answer.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about this all the time, that Peter Tomasi and Patrick Gleason are one of the best teams working in comics, and it always feels like, yeah, they're also there. Let's concentrate on everybody else who's doing this great Batman story or this great Justice League story, when they're in the background just trucking out amazing things every time out of the gate.
If it's about number of frogs in the background, Chris Botchelow's crushing it.
Oh, the botch, yeah.
You love the botch.
Yeah, I do.
Botch!
Ooh, a question from YouTube. CT Kook, who's got a higher body count, Pete or Justin?
Body count. Oh, is this a murder basement situation?
Yeah.
It's hard. Pete actually haven't shared our numbers. We usually wait till the end of the year to really dive in.
To really tally it up. I mean, I had to move out of state because my body count was getting too high. So
nice. And
ouch, Edward Doherty. Ouch, bro. Body fat count.
Oh, CT Cook says, yeah, it was a trick question. Definitely Alex.
That's truth.
Fair enough. We got another one here on YouTube from Nelson Martinez. I recently realized a lot of Studio Ghibli movies are on HBO Max, and I've never seen any. Are you guys familiar with any? And would you recommend any in particular? Over to Pete, our Ghibli expert.
Oh my God!
So glad Ghibli.
You asked. Come on, man. Last of the Valley of the Wind.
Was that in your hand? Is that always in your hand?
Always close to me. Always close.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. First off, welcome to the world. There's so many great movies. I don't even know where to begin. But please watch them all. You will not. It's really about taste of what you're into. But Nazca, The Valley of the Wind is my favorite.
Now, wouldn't that book, was that something you went out and bought, or did someone close to you give it to you at all as a gift?
What, did Lee want to say some in the comments? Yeah, she.
It was an all caps comment.
Hold on. I just wanted to mention I'm in a fight with Edward Doherty over here because in the comments he says anything but Ponyo. Ponyo's great. What are you talking about?
Alex for Ponyo.
Oh, it's Ponyo.
Is it Ponyo?
Yeah.
Ponyo. I think it's Ponyo.
Wow, Edward Doherty with another.
The song is Ponyo, Ponyo, fishy in the sea. Ponyo, Ponyo.
I thought it was Ponyo.
She has this whole line about ham. My wife and I say that to each other all the time. Who wants ham? Ham. That's great.
That's cute.
Tiny little fish in the deep.
What a great
sea.
vision of your household.
Yeah, Spirited Away, great.
Oh yeah, I mean, come on,
good stuff.
That's the one I was.
My Neighbor Totoro. They're all good. You should watch all of them.
Kiki's Delivery Service, unbelievable.
Yeah, Princess Mononoke, excellent. Another question on YouTube.
Ghibli Flex.
Scott Carpenter. First of all, thank you for the tip over there. Thoughts on DC doing backstories with a lot of their main titles, but keeping the $4.99 price? I think Batman 106 has a Robin story.
I love backup stories, especially Future State has done so many backup stories that are great. It really we get to see characters who wouldn't get the starring role brought to the forefront. It's a whole nother take on what's happening in the issue. Other writers and artists get to their chance to do some stuff. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, I do appreciate, because sometimes a good backup story can save the comic for you.
Just like a good backup singer.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I thought they were holding the line at $2.99. What happened to that?
Wow. Pete taking down a whole industry right now.
I think it's okay. I mean, it's crazy. What?
You don't like backup stories?
No, I'm saying I think it is okay to charge $4.99 for a book that has multiple backup stories.
Okay.
Like you were saying, the future state stuff in particular is packed to the gills with content.
It is.
And it's expensive. It's crazy that they're doing it for $2.99 when they're selling as many copies as they are, you know? I would rather pay $4.99 for a 43-page book than $2.99 for a 20-page book. You know?
Nice. There's a standard.
There you go. I'm holding the line at $4.99.
Whatever, big fucking money over here.
I'll spend whatever I want because I'm rich. Okay, this is a question from Joe. I knew this was going to come up. Hey, can you all do your own Stan Lee impressions for us? Yeah. If not, in the realm of Pete and Peter MJ and hashtag Bughead, what fictional couples do you stand that level? These are two questions.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a backup question because maybe
how about this? Talk about your favorite fictional couple using your Stan Lee impression.
Who's got a Stan Lee impression for more words than like Excelsior?
Well, I'll show you. I love Cypher and Rain. Back in the day in Fall of the Mutants.
Stop.
No, it's your turn now, Pete.
Interesting.
Yeah,
that's a very tiny Stan Lee that sits on a little bookcase or something.
I'm watching you. Always watching.
That's real. That's real.
You did one good impression one time, and that's
you've heard of Elf on the Shelf. Now here's Stan in a Pan.
Don't cook me. Make mine marvel. Pete?
Yeah, no thanks.
Pass. Strong pass.
Hard pass.
Okay. Couples that we like in comics, I'm going to throw it up to Spider-Man and Black Cat. As a partnership I like. Don't let it get you down, Pete.
Yeah, I got the Spider-Man comic to talk about for that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Pete,
a future
what about
problem.
your favorite fictional couple?
It's tough.
Who are you liking?
I'm gonna have to say Apollo and Midnighter is one of my favorites.
That's 100%. That's a great answer, and that's your best answer.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I'll just give up then if I've already done my best.
Here's a question from Hollywood Homer. What is the next evolution of comics, with the start being cave drawings to newspaper serial to comic magazines to graphic novel? Who's
sucking on a cheesesteak?
What's in the question? It says, who's sucking on a cheesesteak?
Oh, my God.
That's great. Now I like it when we can incorporate our sounders into our dialogue.
Yeah. So what do you think? What is the next evolution of comics other than on cheesesteaks?
That would be delicious. I don't know. They'll probably...
Wait, actually, I want to kind of follow this line of thought, Pete, because you hate even crinkling a comic book. What would you do if it was on a cheesesteak?
Well, I would have to take detailed pictures and then eat it, you know, so that way I could.
You do that anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It really depends on, you know, if the technology is going to go where we're all just going to have like shit playing in our brains, you know, or if we're just going to be like, you know, what's the next smallest device that we can watch it on?
Pete, you don't have to say shit when you just mean Ted Lasso. You can just say when we have the chip, when they ask for who wants the chip to play Ted Lasso in their brain, and you're a number one.
When I close my eyes, Ted Lasso's playing anyway, so I don't need the chip for that.
I mean, honestly, when I was really heavy into Dr. Mario in high school, college, and beyond, I could close my eyes and the pills would drop. So that's, I think, truly the future. Right on the eyelids, baby.
On the eyelids.
This is a question for Pete over on YouTube from RD. Pete, what's your favorite piece of bread?
That's a great question. I would say I love a great Hawaiian roll right now, but as far as bread is concerned, I would go with Martin's potato bread.
Good choice.
Wow, potato bread. Nice.
I used to in college. I would get a loaf of Martin's potato bread and a jar of salsa con queso, and I'd just take the bread and dip it into the jar.
Oh my God, Alex! In a world of tragedy right now, that's the saddest thing I've ever heard.
It's great.
And that
That's
was
disgusting.
before COVID. You were just sitting in your dorm room, like,
Wait, what other you were out of other options, or what? What
No,
led
it's
to
great.
that?
I like. Basically, I was like, I like potato bread. I like cold salsa con queso in a jar.
Con queso? You're a maniac. You can never make fun of Pete's food choices or drink choices ever again. 'Cause that is unbelievable.
It's good. Try it. There you go. There's a question from Kevin. If Abraham were writing a book series about the lives of the comic book club hosts, what would be the most shocking chapters, and who would be telling those stories?
Wow.
Well, definitely Roy Thomas, I think. Like, he's got a lot of insight into what's going on with us.
100%.
the fun part is he would have to talk to my father, and that would just be like end up being a bunch of weird chapters in the book. So that would be
Is he weighing in on Comic Book Club?
no, it's just my father's if you think I'm opinionated and boisterous, you try sitting in a room with my father, and that would be very entertaining.
Can we welcome him into the stream? He's been standing by for quite some time.
Invite him over here.
Good luck. He has no
like
idea how to work a computer.
a convocation of booth men or something like that.
Yes.
Oh, the most shocking thing, I mean, just to almost literally throw myself under the bus, is that time when we left New York Comic Con and I almost shoved James under a bus.
You didn't almost. You shoved him and ran for your own life.
And he's never forgiven you as a booth man. Boothmans don't forgive.
Yeah. This was, you probably figured it out for the context, but we were all walking out after a long day working at New York Comic Con with our booth man at the time. James saw a car coming. I panicked, pushed him out of the way, and ran.
Yep. It was
we were all
almost murder.
we were mid-conversation, and then we all looked up and realized we were in the middle of the road. And
on that Comic-Con hype. I mean, I guess the moment, I wouldn't call it a low point, but it was when we maybe talk about this a lot. It was when we were shooting our Nerdist series, and we were out at the bar with the guy who was like producing it, who liked to booze. And I looked over at Alex as we had the next round of shots in our hands, and I was like, this is one too many for my friend Alex Aldrin. He's in trouble starting now. And
I've told you guys, I still feel horrible about this on an almost daily basis. I vomited all over a cab, lost my phone in the cab on the way home. Terrible.
I hope you tipped him well, because goddamn.
I don't know.
He tipped him with one phone.
I do remember going, I'm sorry. But
Oh man,
perfect. That's cab drivers love that. I will say our Comic-Con at sea would be quite a chapter.
Ooh, yeah, that was insane.
That would be a chapter as well. Great. I'm glad that we were very specific about the two horrible things I've done and very vague about the things you guys have done.
Well,
That's
I'm
life,
not a horrible
baby.
person.
I'm sorry, Alex. We're off the record right now.
Oh, okay. Here we go. This is the big question from Pablo right here. So on the subject of Abraham, who was here, do you guys have a fixed idea of who Stan Lee is now?
Yeah, I mean, the book tells a complete story. Like I said when we were talking to him, when we first started doing cons, we interviewed him when he was out of the Marvel stuff and just doing these, I don't want to call them random, but like these other projects that he was pursuing. So that section of his life, I was like, oh, I have this firsthand knowledge of hearing what he was up to and how how it was going. So the book was a great way to sort of see all aspects of that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is, to Abe's credit, I don't think he is lying or anything when he says that he does it very even-handed. You know, people have certainly, I was joking about the Roy Thomas thing. Somebody mentioned this in the comments, but Roy Thomas put up a pretty scathing thing about the book on the Hollywood Reporter pretty much right before he went live, and brings up all these things. Obviously, Roy Thomas, who worked for Stan Lee for years, has written about Stan Lee, has a little bit of a dog in a fight. But I think it's pretty even in terms of the way that Abe reports the book. There's certainly points when he leans one direction or the other, but for the most part, it really is just painting, here is what happened, here is my research, here's what it's shown. And at least from my perspective, it's pretty unavoidable to think that Jack Kirby did come up with most of this stuff. Like, what Stan clearly was good at was, like Abe said, he was clearly a great boss. He was very creative. They wouldn't have been able to sell Marvel Comics without him. They probably wouldn't have had the creative environment to create all of these characters without him. But it's definitely debatable whether he actually created any of these characters in any particular way, because we didn't get to talk about this in the interview, but something that the book really doubles down on is everything before the heyday of Marvel Comics that Stan Lee wrote was kind of shitty, and everything afterwards was kind of shitty. And all he really wanted to do, it seems, was kind of do vaguely pornographic things and write funny captions on pictures that have already been published. And he hated comics. So the fact that he was saying like, and here's the Fantastic Four, is just like, I don't know. That doesn't seem like a reasonable thing that happened in a human being's life.
Well, Alex, I've seen the documentary Mallrats, where he talks a lot about his creation of those characters.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. Point, counterpoint, I guess.
Yeah. And I've done, I don't want to say a lot of research, but I rewatched that again recently. So
there you go. Great.
Nice. Does
Anyway,
it hold
that was
up?
my
Does
impression,
Mallrats
but,
hold up?
yeah, a little bit, but not maybe a lot.
Okay. Because I tried to we'll get to that in Week in Geek. Sorry.
Yeah.
Wow.
All
Such
right. Yeah,
restraint.
holding back content. Amazing. To finally answer Pablo's question, though, I would suggest read the book, form your own opinion. That's what it's there for. It presents the facts, and then you can kind of figure out what you think for yourself, other than Buzz Aldrin is a stupid piece of shit.
Hey, come on.
Wow.
That's pretty clear. And that is it for your audience question. Now it is time for our next section, which is trivia. And for that, we're going to turn it over to Pete LePage.
All right.
Pete LePage.
This is the part we give back to you, the lovely audience. It's an opportunity to win $25 free to Midtown Comics Online, because who wouldn't want some online comics?
Yeah. Barf. He's going to barf. He's going to barf.
No, I'm just, a little beer.
Wait, Pete, did we ever talk about what you were drinking?
Yeah.
Pony Boy.
Pony Boy.
Oh,
Stay
boy.
golden, Pony Boy.
Sorry.
He's drinking Pano Boy.
Ham beer.
Oh, first hand up. It's Pete's father. Let's welcome him into the stream.
Ah!
So, Pete, you didn't frame this up, but if anybody wants to be on trivia, just put hand up in the comments. Same goes for YouTube, though you'll be on a little bit of a delay. Just let us know, and you're going to win $25 from Midtown. Guaranteed.
Potentially guaranteed.
I guarantee it.
Oh, nice.
Is what I always say. Like that. That's my Stan Lee impression.
It's really good. It's really good. No one
Marvel
knows.
Comics, I guarantee it.
Wow. Got any hands up over there?
Nope.
Oh, we need to have Pete's dad as a guest. A lot of
Feels
people
like we've
calling.
been doing this for almost 15 years. Maybe we should determine trivia people in advance. Oh, Luana says Aaron raised your hand, which seems like an excuse to invite Luana into the stream. What do you think, Pete?
Ooh, that's a great idea.
Pete?
Wait.
She's saying, wait, invite her into the stream?
I see Liwana
Right,
raising her hand.
I'm going and doing it. Okay, here we go.
This won't cause any problems for anyone in this group.
Oh, man. I'm worried that our internet's going to freeze if we're both in here at once.
Yeah, I guess we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
For those of you at home, Pete and Liwana live in the same place. That's all I'll say. That's all I'll say.
They're flatmates. Hello, hi, how are you?
Hey! We haven't seen you in so long. How are you?
It's good. I'm good. How are you?
Good. You might not know how trivia works, so Pete is going to explain it.
Actually, the only time I've ever done trivia before, Alex was facilitating it.
Really?
Yeah, because Pete didn't do trivia because it was like a week after he and I met, and he like planned a whole day for my birthday, so he made you do trivia that week. And then I went to college.
Okay. Well, I've got a little surprise for you. Pete has another fantastic day planned. Go ahead, Pete. Describe all the things you're going to be doing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to read you a question. Listen to all three possible answers. Get all
of our dates turn into. No.
Get all three questions right. $25 will be yours. That's right. That's what it's like to date me. You got to pass a lot of quizzes.
A lot of post end of date quizzes are very hard.
Yeah.
He just randomly says the names of actors, and I'm expected to like in his sleep.
Which Robin Williams movie is this from?
Which Robin Williams movie is this date? Hopefully not 1 hour photo.
All right, so today's trivia is on topical comic news and a small nod to the legend Kenny Rogers. All right, so here we go. Question number 1. The Count of Monte Cristo is getting an original sci-fi graphic novel called blank. Is it A, Space Count, B, Count, or is it C, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson? So it's either A or it's B, Count.
Okay. Count. Like the
He
Count
is
on Sesame Street.
Yes.
Yes, that is correct. Count is correct.
Yeah.
All right, great. So question number 2. DC introduced the linear verse, which means what? A, heroes age slower. B, lines are cooler than circles. Or is it C, Art Garfunkel? So it's either A, if you would like $25, or you could be completely wrong.
I mean, I guess I would like $25.
Yeah, A is correct. Heroes now age slower in the DC universe.
How many practice quizzes have you taken, Liwana?
I know. I'm actually been writing the quizzes every week. I'm just kidding.
Ghostwriter.
All right, here we go. Last one. In the new comic book series Nottingham, who is the villain? Is it A, Robin Hood, B, Maid Marian, or is it C, the original JT, Justin Timberlake?
How dare you?
Yeah, you like that? So it's either A or B or C.
Is that Robin Hood? Not Maid Marian, right?
Yeah, it's Robin Hood.
Okay, good.
Yes, Robin Hood is correct.
Oh, so exciting.
Great job. You did it.
Wow, thank you.
Oh
my God. All I've ever wanted by dating Pete LePage was to be on the
Yes.
So Pete,
I guess
I don't know if I need you anymore.
It's a dream come true for all of us. I will say, because of game show compliance, we have to find out. You must spend this money for yourself. It cannot go in any way to Pete LePage.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Let's just be very clear about that. Please follow up.
Yeah. Right. Oh, yeah. I'll itemize my receipts.
Yes, please. Excellent. We are meticulous.
Congratulations. Have a great night, and look forward to that wonderful date that Pete has planned for the entire day. That's going to be really good.
Alex, you bastard.
Bye, Liwana.
What a landmark day.
Yeah, that was fun. And in case anybody's wondering, yes, it's the 2001 movie Long Shot.
Yes, we were all
2001 movie Long Shot.
Okay, that's right. Yeah, had NSYNC in there. You know, Backstreet Boys. A lot of fun stuff in that movie.
It was a movie.
Yep.
Great. As we all know, tomorrow is New Comic Book Day, unless you're DC Comics, in which case they're already out. What are you looking forward to, Pete?
Well, I'm looking forward to Usagi Yojimbo Wanderer's Road number 4 of 6, as well as Black Panther number 23.
Nice. Say no more. Justin, what about you?
Say no more. I got to give it up for, I talk about this book a lot. Department of Truth has a new issue coming tomorrow, number 6, and it's another great issue of this book. Also news on this book. It was announced this week that it is in development as a TV series or movie that James Tynion is writing. So that's very...
I hadn't heard that. That's very exciting.
Cool.
I'm excited about another issue
Breaking
of
news.
Ice Cream Man. Ice Cream Man number 23 coming out from Image Comics. Always a great read. One of our favorites here.
God.
Number 1 of 2020. So very excited to chat about that book and many more on our Stack podcast, which comes out Wednesday, 9 a.m., both of the Comic Book Club feed and also in its own dedicated Stack feed. And folks, that is it for our show. A couple of people we want to thank before we go. Actually, just one person, Abraham Riesman. Check out True Believer, The Rise and Fall of Stan Lee.
And we also want to thank you, the fans who listen. We don't want to just thank one person.
And shout out to Abe's puke bowl, because if you're like me, you have a designated puke bowl in your home and you don't use it for anything else.
Yeah. Absolutely. Next week, we have two great guests for you. We have Joshua Kemble is going to be here to talk about his book, Two Stories, Book One, and Curtis Clow is going to be here to talk about slightly exaggerated other stuff on our end to plug. We have a ton of podcasts. We got Riverdale After Dark, our Riverdale podcast, comes out Wednesdays right after that show. Umbrella Podcademy, our Umbrella Academy podcast, one episode to go. It's coming.
We're so close.
We're so close. Also, Marvel Vision, our Marvel podcast. We are talking about WandaVision. It's available everywhere. It comes out real early on Fridays. We've been waking up. Pete loves it. He keeps forcing us to wake up early, which is
He loves getting up early. I fixed my tooth. And we're coming up strong this week. And I'm going to say, if you like that podcast, go rate it, because there's people keep naming other podcasts. Marvel Vision.
Yes, please go to iTunes, rate that, and subscribe to that one. Leave a comment. Also, American Godcast, or American Gods podcast, Sunday nights after that show. Patreon.com/Comic Book Club to support all of our shows. iTunes, Android, Spotify, Stitcher, or the app of your choice to subscribe and listen. At Comic Book Live on Twitter. Also, Comic Book Club over on YouTube on the Tube. Go check us out there. ComicBookClubLive.com for this podcast and more. Good night.
Take care, everybody.